Okay, first up is Shanice. Okay, there's a lot of good work here, um, and it's improvement over the first version you submitted. Not sure about this starting out as that solid twisty thing because I don't know that we're going to recognize what that is anyway in the sort of split second. So I might have that start as the kind of exploding dust rather than that other image. Um, and I think that the kind of this is interesting, but I think what we're losing is having an actual logo of some kind. So I think the dust element is good, but I think still having some sort of Aztec-like image as a logo and accompanying the text would be a good idea. Um, Also, it should fade in at the beginning from black, and the wavy thing looks good. Although I guess I wish that the text would get. It looks like it remains at least partially transparent throughout, and I think that it would look better if it uh, became fully opaque for a portion of time. And similarly, I believe these are gun barrels, and they're hard to even tell what they are, just because they're so at the bottom of the screen and you don't see any other portion of the gun. Also, that they're again partially transparent, and I would go back and fix the opacity so that they're opaque because I don't think we want to see the ground through them. I think that's a little strange. And I also think it'd be good if we saw a little bit more of the gun so that it's more recognizable as a gun because right now it just, sort of looks like some strange tube or something. And the way it's really kind of so sort of sliced off here, almost as if it's been cropped without kind of the subtle, shape at the end. It just looks, yeah, it's hard to recognize as a gun. Um, the other thing I would suggest is generally recommend avoiding outlines on text. Uh, so I think the text would look better without the red outline. It appears you have a drop shadow, but it's sort of blurred and spread enough that it's fine, I think. And I don't think it's really any problem. And the background image looks good. So yeah, there's a lot of good work on here, and I think with a few improvements, it could be better. Next up is Deontay. So yeah, a lot of cool sound in here. I think that really helps bring it to life. I think it's got sort of a simple, clean look. I think you could do a little bit more with the animation. The other thing is it's just the logo thing without the movie title, and so you've spent your full 17 seconds doing just the logo, but there's supposed to be about half should be the logo and about half should be the title of the film. So you'll want to add that on. I did want to show you something in After Effects. I was thinking if you took your original image and then cut out um, these uh, these shapes very carefully. The glow might be a little tricky on this, but um, anyways, I thought I'd demonstrate this trick to give it some more depth. So you've got the camera kind of moving in from the side here. Yeah, just sort of pulling back basically. And if you did kind of cut these things out and then move them to different depths and then move the camera in 3D, I think you'd get a nice result. So I'm going to do, I don't have, a good original image, but what I'll do is I will just do this with some solids, so some shapes actually. So I'm just going to make some shapes. So you had kind of a small one here, and I'll make another one. Just going to click off to the side. Maybe I'll change the color. Okay, and then you had a bigger one here. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Um, Maybe not that much. And then I'll make a really big one, kind of like your image. I'm just holding down shift to make these. Oops, I didn't mean to change the color on that one. That's all right. I just need to deselect before I make the new one. Let's make this one blue. Doesn't matter. This is just for demonstration purposes, not necessarily for looks. So what you have is essentially sort of the camera kind of zooming in on this whole thing, and there's a few different ways of doing that, but I wanted to show you something different to kind of take this to the next level. And the first step in that is to make them 3D, and that's this column here, that little sort of 3D box there. So I'm going to turn all that on for all those layers. Now I'm going to make a camera. So where is it? Here, isn't it? Layer, camera. Create stereo 3D rig now. I can just right mouse click new camera. That's better. Okay, sorry about that. And I'll just use the default camera. Okay, so now I have a camera object, and then I have these three objects. Now um, I'm going to go to say custom view 1, and if I just click and drag, I can see this in 3D. And I'm going to take these layers like this shape layer, and let's go back to the selection view, and I'm going to move this back some, and maybe this one back further. Although what I'll find, let me go back to active camera. Actually, that's working okay. So, and the more you kind of exaggerate those differences, the oh, let me go back to the camera adjustment here. I can, yeah, I have to click on the camera to rotate it around. So, you know, the more I push these back, the more extreme the effect will be. Okay. And now with this camera, I've got, for position, I've got X, Y, and Z. And I think we want to do Z. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to keyframe the position here, and then I don't know, let's do like 6 seconds, let's say, and then zoom this in. Whoops, what did I do there? Just dragging that. Oh, I don't know why it, oh, it must get a little too close. But anyways, look at the point here. So the result you get, let me just grab this, whoops, and just hold down shift to snap it there, and then 0 on the numeric keypad. I guess it's a little bit subtle in this case, but what you get is you get sort of some parallax going on where they seem to be moving, you know, kind of relative to each other rather than just because that big planet is sort of, you know, closer in the foreground, and it kind of moves out of the frame a little more quickly. Um, And you can play with the distances and those kinds of things. But I thought if you did this, if you cut these things out, the only catch is with your image is that you then, if you cut these out, then you may have to then fill in the background. But I think, most, not too much, but then, mostly some, you know, rubber stamp tool or some content aware fill or something like that. So you'd have to separate them out in different layers and then bring them in as images and stuff. But I thought that could be interesting for all of you as a different kind of tool to approach this. Next up is Melissa. So there's a lot of really good work going on here. For example, that sun. You'll notice there's a kind of a few layers of different things spinning and lots of glow and stuff. So it's fairly nice looking. The clouds coming together. I think it's a pretty considering the challenging nature of accomplishing what you're going for. I think you've done a pretty good job. I think it comes together a little quickly. It sort of pops in at the end there, and you might want to add some effect that as it's leading into that, get a little kind of motion throughout there. The other thing I was suggesting is maybe if you found some other cloud that you could kind of layer on top to reveal that while it's appearing, it might kind of, maybe the cloud sort of dissipates over it, kind of moves away and dissipates at the same time, maybe. That might help. And then this is good. I think the only thing I'm struggling with is these dark edges on the edge of that. And I'm guessing you did maybe a Luma key on some clouds. I'm not sure, but you might just want to play with the settings and see if you can get rid of some of that black. Um, and yeah, I really like the way the text appears to be resting on the ground in kind of a three-dimensional view, and then you can see the texture of the ground through the text. So I think that's all good work. Yeah, that's really nice. And the little kind of particles in the foreground. And again, there's some of that blackness on the dust, I guess that is, that I think could be improved. See if you can play with the settings. If you send me your files, I could take a look. By the way, if you ever want to send me your After Effects file, you need to send the source files as well. Just kind of zip them all together, both the After Effects project and any images or movies that you used, all zipped together would be the way to send it. But yeah, see if you can get it better, and if you need help, let me know. But this is all very good. Next up is Jersey. It's a bit quiet. Okay, so yeah, some good stuff going on here. I like the Downpour production logo here of the guy with the umbrella, and that works pretty well with the texts. Um, I might try to get like a little bit of more of a smooth out here. Do you know in After Effects, for any keyframe in After Effects, uh, you can go to Keyframe Assistant and change like uh, easy ease, and it'll kind of smooth out the animation of it there. It turns into that little sort of hourglass shape when you do that, and I think experiment with that and see if that works better for your movement on these, for the position keyframes on these. The other thing is, I think that maybe not having the gun there at the beginning and having it move into, because I think the Downpour Production Presents is kind of its own thing, and that maybe even that could be bigger, and then and then have the gun enter maybe when that leaves, and then you have this piece moving in here, which is good, I guess. And I like that the gun carefully rotates there. One thing I thought you should play with is the pacing of it, because it's right now it's very even. You've got that, that, and also especially I think that the pacing of the other things, of those things sliding in is fine. I might accelerate this a little bit. Um, don't use easy ease on that last keyframe because you want it to kind of click into place quickly, but you might do easy ease on the first rotation as that moves down, the first rotation keyframe. But I think definitely the trigger pull and the hammer should be sped up because you tend to pull a trigger pretty quick, and the hammer is a very fast movement. So yeah, I think that that little explosion is stylized, but I think it works well for this. Um, Concerning the bullet, now when you fire a bullet, only the kind of the bullet part at the front, you know, is fired from the gun, and then the shell is left behind. This part, so you can still do it this way if you want, but I think it's not, it's sort of not right in a way. And I think that this, if I'm finding that I see how you dealt with that kind of moving around, but I think that's a little kind of challenging. Maybe it's all right. I don't know. It's like the camera's kind of shaking as it follows the bullet. Uh, yeah, I'm not sure a best way to deal with that. Maybe some like directional blur on it too would give it a sense of speed. And yeah, and just consider having the bullet part without the shell. Or yeah, it always strikes me as funny when people include the shell when the bullet's flying through the air. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here, and I think with a few improvements, you could take it to the next level. Next up is Xana. All right. Yeah, I agree with on the timings. You could adjust. I think um, you definitely want to on the clouds parting. You want to put like a easy ease on that so that they don't start just like I showed in the last one, so they don't start so abruptly. They kind of ease out a little bit, and then I think you have to slow those down a little bit, and maybe you just don't move them as far. I think I think you're trying to move them too far in too short a period of time. So if they move a shorter distance, they'll move slower, and they just maybe instead of going from you know here, let's say this is the left edge of this one, like and that moves all the way from there all the way out to open. Maybe you start here actually, let's say, and end there, and that's it. Just that little bit, so it moves nice and slow and smooth. Because I think you're trying to move it much too far in too short a time. I mean, I suppose you could go a little further, but just way less. Maybe sort of like here to there or something. And I think that would actually look nice if it's overlapping the clouds movement, overlapping with some of this. I don't know what that's supposed to be exactly, but some of the stuff coming off of the moon there around it. Um, and I think that it's supposed to be. Is that supposed to be like a reflection of the sparkling of the stars or something? It looks like little sparkly fountains. I'm not really sure, what those are supposed to be. Maybe let me know. But also, I think that if this is a nighttime thing, the water's not going to look so blue, and I can kind of understand where you landed there. Just kind of be representing water, but I would try going darker on that. And then the Moonlight Magic logo could probably come in a little sooner because we're already over 10 seconds here. I think that another thing you could try if you want instead of the OIC that comes from the stars. I was just thinking it'd be cool if that lined up with the moon here, like this thing lined up exactly with the moon, and then and then left enough space and then transitioned into this. I think that would look kind of cool. So you might try to do that. Probably don't need the audio. And yeah, I mean, you kept this pretty simple, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you just might consider doing more with the actual movie title. Maybe the sound changed a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, people like blowing bullet holes and things. You could do that and it kind of would go well with Vengeance or incorporate blood or something. I don't know. A noose. I think the fade out the end looks a bit long. So I might. So yeah, several timing adjustments, but there's a lot of really good elements here, and you're doing some good work. So nice job. Next up is Anna. All right. So pretty ambitious with the the puppet animation as you mentioned, and yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here. Um, I think that some improvements. One would be, I think that while I like that the text is hand drawn, I think just do another pass at the writing. It's kind of really kind of uneven and a little messy. And I get you're going for a hand drawn look, and I think it's good you're going for a hand drawn look. But I just think maybe there's some balance there between being a little bit more carefully written out. I like that the TV is sort of scratching itself here. I think the timing could be better. I think sort of the hand goes there and maybe pauses for just a moment, and then a couple sort of quick like scratch scratch. So it's like pause, scratch scratch. Something like that. Um, it's pretty good as it is. This one though, I think is I'm struggling with this because it's like and it's just the nature of what you're trying to do. But its arm, it looks like a paper cutout animation because it is a paper cutout animation, but it sort of looks like his elbow's breaking. I mean, this sort of going from here and then rotating all the way up like that. Um, and there's some problem with the pivot point. It looks like it's here when maybe it needs to be over there a little bit more. I think you're just trying to do a little bit too much. Um, like it's almost if you just did. I think you still have to clean up the way the elbows joined up, but if you just did like that much, you would sort of work. But I think because you're starting all the way from here and then trying to have the arm go up and then grab the hat and put it, it's just too much, and the little puppet rig doesn't really support all that movement. So you'd eventually you'd really have to do like a full-on hand-drawn animation to get that to look right. So I'd rather say more or less stick with what you're doing, sort of fix the elbow shape and the pivot point of the elbow a little bit, and then do something, like I said, much more simple, like maybe starting from here and going to there, and that would look kind of cute. There's areas where maybe the silhouette could be improved a little bit. There's just some odd shapes here. Maybe I'm kind of looking at that, and I guess it's all right. And then I thought you had something about, was that yours, where there was sort of like a beam of light coming out from the door? Or maybe that was a different one. And I'm not sure what it is about this text, but maybe just play with some other fonts. It looks a little squashed flat, and it looks italicized, which I don't necessarily think is right for a title. So yeah, just maybe experiment with a couple different fonts for that. But overall, it's a good piece. It's ambitious. Using the puppet rig is something that wasn't covered, and so that's really good. Next up is George. Okay, so there's some good work on here. The stylized background was a good choice. That's looking pretty cool. I think I'm sort of struggling with this slow dissolve of the background with the wanted poster there. Maybe if it's just not so slow and gradual, maybe you kind of zoom into the wanted poster and then it quickly transitions to the background. The other thing is, I think I'd like to see the um, this kind of moving with the poster and fade up with the poster, so it's like parented to the poster. Let me know if you need help with that. That's pretty easy to do, rather than it kind of landing there. Like if you started to see it fade up here, but it stayed with the poster as the camera got closer. And then the other thing that I think is tricky is the difference between this style of this hand-drawn skull with a mustache and the text here. And maybe you want to just do like kind of a hand-drawn draw over of the text or something, so it looks like it's the same as this. And you can also play with the blending modes of your drawn thing, because I mean, to me, what I would expect is, rather than, for example, this skull part to be white, I would see the paper through that. So yeah, play with blending, maybe a multiply or something in your blend modes would help with that. So it looks like it's more on the paper. And yeah, and then maybe the same with that text. And I think you're really crowding the edge of the paper here. So maybe scale these down a bit so you're not, maybe kind of to there more. So you're not quite so much crowding the edge. And you might try to do some more clever transition, like rather than the text sort of flying in, maybe like it just do kind of an animated mask thing where it appears. You could even do like a pencil and paper sound effect or something and just go like for to have those show up. I think that might be better for something appearing on paper. You want it kind of to evoke things we think about for paper and ink and pen and those kinds of things, rather than the kind of fly in and dissolves and stuff. I think that's good. The other thing is I recommend is turning on motion blur. You have to turn it on in a couple places. I'll show you guys. Just want to quickly demonstrate motion blur. So I'm just going to make a square. Doesn't really matter, and animate it here. So I'll hit P for position, keyframe it there, and just some real quick movement to say here. So we've got this movement now, and I'm just going to put it in the middle. And then if you have to turn a motion blur in two places. One is right here for the whole sequence, and then here per layer. And then what you get is that little bit of blur, and things tend to look nicer. And kind of the faster it moves, I'm just going to go faster, the more blur you get. Let's kind of zoom in here. If it's moving really fast, you get that much more blur. So it just kind of smooths things out the way they move around. So I tend to my sort of I tend to turn on motion blur as default, and then if it doesn't look good, then I turn it off. It can be a pain while you're working, which is why they have this one, so that while you're working on stuff, you can turn it off for everything so that the interactivity is faster. But then when you're ready to render out, try turning back on and see if you like that look better. But overall, I would say, yeah, there's some good stuff going on here, but I think you could keep working on it and improve it. I am not a fan of outlines on text. It's generally fallen out of favor in the world of design. And I think particularly for this text where it's supposed to be this sort of kind of damaged looking text, but adding the white lines is somewhat, I don't know, confusing. I can understand how you end up there by wanting the text to stand out against the background more, but yeah, personally not a fan of it. Okay, but overall, good work. Next up is Haley. Okay, yeah, so you got the basics in there. I think that this is a bit small and low. It's really just up against the bottom there, and I would tend to, I don't know, I would tend to go in the top third or at least the top half for that, and probably bigger. Um, and we can take this off. And I mean, there's nice images. The text is good. I tend to not. I think this drop shadow is a little bit problematic because it just looks weird against a sky, as if you could cast a shadow onto the sky. And that seems like a maybe not a great choice. So I would tend to say lose the drop shadow. I think it would look better, and also just in most cases, drop shadow looks kind of amateurish anyway. Um, the I think that just the other general thing is it's oh yeah the way that the text is partially, or at least in part of it, I think that the way you have it, maybe you have it fading in over a very long time so that it's partially transparent here. I'd probably have it fade in a little quicker. But overall, I think it's kind of the minimum. I think you could put a little bit more time and effort into some design ideas to take this to the next level and kind of push the animation tools in After Effects further. I mean, you've got the minimum, and that's okay, but I think you could do something more creative and take this further. Next up is Clive. Okay, so there's a lot of good stuff going on here. I think it's kind of fun the way you've got the different interaction of the silhouettes. Um, then you've brought in a 3D model of the bank. I don't know if you modeled that specifically for this. I think your text is much too tight to the corner here. Um, you also, you've got a lot of space here. Maybe you want to do like the banks to vendor here or something, or I don't know. I would just play with the text placement there, um, and I think that's an interesting ending. Although it looks like you still have some transparency on this, pretty, all the way up to the edge. So I think I would have it fade in a little quicker and then be solid for a moment rather than having it fade the whole time. This Sylvain Sam Studio text, I don't know. I would take another pass at that. You might want to. One fun thing you could try is playing with the puppet tool. It's a bit much to demonstrate, but I'm sure you could find some little tutorial on it. But you could get like the hand and the gun to kick back and move separately from the whole body, which would be a nice touch. You could think about adding some kind of muzzle flashes or just general kind of overall flashes for the gunfires to emphasize those more. Um, so yeah, I think there's some good stuff going on here, and with a few tweaks, you could bring it up a little. Next up is Jamin. I think this turned out quite well, actually. I thought the burn-in effect worked well, especially with the timing of the sound and the way you've animated it. I think the white lines look cool, and I wonder if there's some way to like, I don't know. I just was thinking it'd be interesting if there was something that remained of those white lines, so we could see how they help form this. I wonder if there's something more you could do with your logo, because right now it's feeling a little kind of blocky and sort of faceted to me. I'm wondering maybe a little thinner, or maybe it's not so geometrical. Like maybe there's some line width variation where it could be like thinner at one end and thicker at the other, just subtly, in a few spots. Maybe it's like this point's a little thinner and then it gets a little wider towards the edge there. I feel like you could just put a little more time into the logo to uh, give it a little more style. I think the studios works well, but I just think the logo itself could be tweaked some to make it better. And I think to take this to the next level, you could have like some smoke kind of wafting up during the burn, just subtly, would be a nice touch. And if you wanted to get like orange hot in a few spots when it was burning, that would be another cool effect. But overall, I think this was successful. I think it's good and it works well with the sound and timing. Next up is Joshua. All right, that's kind of cool. I think the logo is really good, and I think this is interesting. It kind of looks like you're doing a neon thing here, but I thought you sort of missed a little opportunity there to have that glowing. So I thought it might be good to have it kind of, if that is indeed supposed to look like neon, which it looks like it is. Maybe not. But I just thought either way, it gets a little bit busy against the background. So I was thinking if you had it glow like neon, although I don't know why it gets all chunky in here, you might want to take a look at what's going on with that, why that gets broken up in these spots. Is that intentional? If it is, I might skip that and just keep it kind of cleaner looking. But anyway, with the sort of neon look, I thought it'd be cool if this glowed and maybe then you lose the actual icon and behind it, and then we just see the text for a moment because it's a little. Maybe I can read it, but it's a little busy. And then this presents. It's fine. It just somehow doesn't seem to go as well with this text. So maybe try a different font, or maybe do the same thing you did for Golden Wolverine Studios. So right now, I just might try something different there. It looks sort of default or something. And then same with this. I might just try some different fonts. Don't go crazy with it, but uh, this looks good. The one odd thing about the background is the sun looks like an oval and it should really be more of a circle. That looks kind of strange. I think that's good. I like the logo a lot of the Outlaw. I thought maybe you could do something more with, maybe each gun comes in and crosses each other. Maybe like this thing forms with the separate components coming in, like, gun diagonally, and the head comes down, or something like that, rather than just the sort of the bouncing in nature of it. I didn't think necessarily goes with the style that much. Maybe something a little bit more kind of hard and fast and a little bit abrupt, like kind of come in quickly and stop or something. I don't know. But sort of bouncing in, I felt didn't feel to me like the feel of this animation, the style of the Outlaw and stuff like that. But it's a good image and it came together well. So nice job on that. Next up is Wilson. All right, so there's a few interesting elements here. I think I like this effect you've done here. That looks pretty good. I would say that the S in studios should be capitalized since it's a proper noun. It's all part of the name of the studio. I think this icon, I'm really not thinking that works well with the style of the rest of the piece. Um, and it just doesn't read well. And then staying transparent like that is sort of odd. So I might reconsider this graphic and try something a little different because it just doesn't seem to go with the style of the rest of the thing. This very kind of epic photo and then this weird, very graphic thing, sort of half transparent on top. It's a little bit hard to read. I thought that the kind of bullet holes in glass is a cool idea. What would make it better is maybe rather than three shots all at once, is to do three gun shots, one, two, three, or one, two, three, something like that. Have them appear one at a time, each with their own sound effect. Um, and then I would say that the text placement is a bit odd and extreme. Definitely, this is too high. I would say that's too low. And then also the font choice is very just kind of pedestrian, and I don't know. It doesn't look like what I would see in a movie title thing like this. So yeah, kind of do a little bit more exploration at the font, and even if you went all caps, that would be improvement. Right now, it just looks sort of I don't know, amateurish or something. So yeah, try some different font or text choices and then adjust the placement of it as well. So you got the basics in there. I think you could do more work to improve this. Okay, next up is Basha. Okay, so we've got some interesting elements here. I think the biggest thing is to work on the timing because here we're just, maybe a second or so into it and this has already appeared and disappeared. So that's clearly much too fast. uh, it just leaves the screen too quickly. And I think that, there's some opportunities you could do some interesting things here, like maybe the half shows up first, and then the tone shows up second, and then the background shows up behind it. Try it without the black outline. I think that would be more interesting and look a little more professional. Yeah, I mean, it goes so quickly, I don't even see the productions. It's like it's just lost in that fade. And you can leave off the word productions too. You can just do halftone. I think that's people get the idea, or you can have it on there. But then you show this again, a halftone productions. So it's like you have the same thing twice. I would kind of just choose to do one or the other. You could have both. I mean, I guess they do that, but I don't know. I think with the limited time you have, you might just want to do one, that previous one. And then this is all right. I think that the drawing could be cleaned up a little bit. Just these kind of little weird kind of breaks in the line, I think, are not. I don't know. They just it doesn't look like clean work. Like I feel like I want all this stuff to match up neatly. If you're going to do this kind of very sparse wireframe look, I think those little kind of details become important. So I think sort of clean up that drawing, and then I think that maybe text placement wise, you know, this is overlapping this line. Maybe you could have it fit in the gap that's formed, in here rather than have it overlap that line. And since this is kind of barrel shaped, I was thinking one interesting thing you could try would be to kind of put some sort of effect or warp on the text to give it that barrel shape um, as well, just to kind of help define the roundness of this part of the train because the nature of this outline is that it makes things look really flat. And I think if that text was curved, it would imply that the shape is curved. I think you're also struggling with that because of this kind of edge on view here has this so flat, and so you might want to, you know, round that a little bit more there as well. And that image, I'm struggling. Like, I guess that's another part of the train, but it's just hard to even tell what we're looking at there. So maybe it needs more detail, or maybe you need to zoom out a little bit. Um, and I think that you kind of is that the same font? I don't know why it looks so different. I think it's not. So I would stick with just one font for the titles rather than having two different ones. I think that would be better too. Okay. Next up is Chavez. Okay, so on the one hand, it's impressive that you wanted to kind of jump ahead and do Maya, but however, that wasn't really the assignment. I mean, it's not that I would really mind if there was some Maya stuff incorporated, but it was really about, using After Effects. So the assignment was more about using After Effects, and also, I mean, just having this play blast, icons and stuff here isn't really. And also, it goes on. The whole thing was supposed to be 17 seconds, and then there's all this extra stuff on the end, which is obviously, unnecessary and goes too long. Um, and then there's just some weirdness with the size. And I know you can go kind of cartoony and iconic with it and have, the spaceship giant compared to the planets, but it's just, I don't know. It looks kind of odd, but so I think you can find a way to incorporate your space shuttle and some other things. But right now, I think it's not really meeting the goal of the assignment, which was to do a logo thing in After Effects, because you don't really have what I would call like a company logo. You have some text, but what's the Interstellar Productions logo? Like, what's the iconic image that we associate with Interstellar Productions? And then the other thing is there's no movie title. So the idea was within 17 seconds, have a logo, have a movie title, do it in After Effects, have a fade up and a fade down, and from there get creative and do some interesting stuff. So I think that you're kind of missing the sort of basics of the requirements of the assignment, and I think you need to take another pass at that and just make sure you read the instructions and clearly, and let me know if you have any questions if anything's not clear. Next up is Leo. Okay, so yeah, the music is nice, and you've got a couple, a good image in there. I think that it's really sort of the bare minimum. I think you're kind of missing having some kind of logo. I think just having text doesn't really count as having a logo. So you want some sort of logo design in there, and yeah, and as far as kind of animation and stuff, you sort of just have the minimum, just kind of zooming out an image and then putting in that text. So yeah, I think you could do more with it. I think the important thing is to have some kind of logo that represents Outlaw Productions, and and then from there, yeah, you could see if you want to get creative and push this a little further and kind of use more of the tools of After Effects. Next up is Romello, and you turn in a logo you did years ago, and then you turned in another animation you did for a client. Neither of those are things I could accept for this assignment because it doesn't really meet any of the requirements of the assignment. we were trying to do. I mean, the idea was to do something in After Effects and have your logo and your movie company name and your movie title for your piece. So it doesn't really meet any of those requirements. So I guess I'd have to say you'll need to turn in something else to get credit for the assignment because I can't really give you credit either for something you did prior to this course or something you're doing separately for a client, especially because it doesn't meet the requirements of the assignment. So please, yeah, please redo this and turn that in. Next up is Vivian. Okay. Oh, it goes a little longer there. All right. Well, I'm really pleased you got the depth going with the different question marks. I think that's nice with the different sizes and depths. I think you could take that even further, and it looks like you have, from what I can tell, basically three layers. These two in the foreground, the layer with this size, and then these small ones. And I think you could take that even further and have kind of more and more distances and sizes. But as it is, it's working pretty well. I think that the obscure company productions is problematic with this big, thick white outline, and I can kind of imagine how you've ended up there because maybe it felt hard to read in front of the question marks, but I would say that that's not working well with the big white outline there. I don't know. I think it just kind of muddies up the look of the thing. And also this super tight kerning you've done where the letters are overlapping. I mean, I think it can be tight, but I'm not personally very fond of this M sort of sharing its side with a P with that kind of thick thing there or everything. So I would leave at least a pixel, or two between each letter, and kind of spread that out a little bit. So I think try to get rid of the white, see how that looks. Consider adding more layers of depth on the question marks, although it's pretty good. And yeah, obviously add sound as well. And I think this is okay, but I think you could probably do more with it, take it a little further. Um, okay,